Samarajiva. Really look forward to hearing what you have to say. So just to introduce Professor Samarajiva, he's the founding chair of LIRNeAsia, that's Learning Initiatives on Reforms for Network Economies Asia. And it's information, it does research. It's a regulation think tank active in the Asian Pacific region. He's been working, he was the founding chair of LIRNeasia, and he's also was appointed in 2018. He was appointed by the government to be chairman of the ICT, that's the Information and Communication Technology Agency. He was also formerly the Sri Lankan Director General for Telecommunications. So there's a lot that we can learn by, and we wait to hear what he has to say, his comments.
Thank
Please
you.
go ahead.
Thank you for this opportunity and this invitation. I'm happy you corrected it. Right at the beginning, I thought you were introducing me as still being in government. I am not in government, though, you know, Colombo is a small place, and what sometimes even former chairs and so on say matters. And I will keep saying what has to be said, even if they don't always listen. One of the things that the ICTA did, and I'm very happy to hear that, for example, I'm listening to companies that have come through YAL IT Hub and so on, is to encourage those kinds of activities, the whole startup culture. And one of the things that we keep talking to everybody who comes in through that system is, number one, think marketing, think about your markets. And I was very happy to hear most of the people who were speaking today are really focused on the sales, on the marketing side. And also we keep talking to them about scaling. So however, you don't want to be a startup for too long. You want to be big. Now we've had sort of examples even in this set, but generally when I talk to startups, I get people who basically focus on Sri Lanka or a region in Sri Lanka, and they expand out. Their scaling is, we develop something here, then we go out. So if you want an example, it will be Millennium IT, which did the Colombo Stock Exchange and then goes out. And then there are others who are going from out to in. That is companies like WSO2 that basically started out with a global market in mind. And then to some extent, they do some sales in Sri Lanka. Now, what both these strategies do is that in a way, you really have to keep in mind the international market, whatever you do. In the out to in model, you really have to think about the international market and have your marketing people focused on that, meet standards, do compliance, do all that. But even in the other one, you really don't want to be stuck in this little market. So you really need to think about that larger picture. I won't spend too much time on that. I think the larger question is that what I see is a kind of a Jaffna problem. I mean, everybody here, we want Jaffna to be a success. We want Jaffna to create high quality jobs. I've looked at the numbers, you know, the unemployment numbers in Jaffna are not several times higher than rest of the country. The number of people engaged in agriculture in Jaffna is higher than the rest of the country. So I begin, as a policy guy, I begin by saying, this is a place that requires special attention. So in the 20 months that I was in government, I think I would have been to Jaffna 2-3 times because I felt that was an extremely high priority for us. But it's not an easy problem, nor was Sri Lanka an easy problem when we were trying to attract businesses to Colombo. I think I listened to Jekan last time, and he was talking about the challenges of Colombo in the 80s and the 90s are no different from the challenges of Jaffna in the present time. And I agree with him. So the question is that these are essentially placeless businesses where they can be essentially done from anywhere. There's no particular advantage to doing software in X location versus Y location. Now, my friend Sanjeeva argues with me, and there are several other people who say that, Sri Lankan code is cleaner, more elegant than Indian code, that there's less gunk in it, and so on. But the kind of difference that you have in, say, Ceylon tea versus Vietnamese tea, I don't think you get that differential. So I really don't believe this theory. I think this business can be done anywhere. So then the policy question becomes, it can be done anywhere, but we want to capture the externalities, the positive externalities of having high-end sunrise industries in our midst. What Jay is talking about, guys making 300,000 and driving BMWs in Jaffna, is not good just for them. It's good for everybody else, the guys who can sell to them and provide services to them and so on. So the entire economy benefits by having people with purchasing power and who will attract other businesses to that area. So we want this to happen. So even in the case of Sri Lanka, so what we can do is we can try to remove the barriers. That's what government can do. I honestly don't think government is very good at, incentivizing people, particularly entrepreneurs. I think what we can do is we can look at the problems that they're having. Do they have a problem in registering a company? Do they have a problem in getting land, getting office space, access to human resources, work permits, whatever, and we try to remove them. That's what really government should be doing. So in addition to that, I think what we got on us, so if we can do that better than the guys in Kerala, better than somebody else, then we are likely to bring more people to our country. And if Jaffna is doing that better, then they can be more successful in getting people there. But, we don't have different legal regimes in Jaffna versus Colombo and so on. All we have is 6 hours of travel time to get there from the airport. So one of the things that we were very interested in getting done was getting an operational airport in Jaffna, so that we could even help with that cutting down of that travel time. The other part, of course, is emotion and rootedness. And people like us. Now, I came back in 2002. Sanjeeva Veeravarna came in the middle of the airport bombing. He landed in Sri Lanka right in the middle of that in 2001. People like this, they come because they have some investment in this place, some emotional attachment. I think Jaikan can live anywhere in the world, but he has chosen to live in Jaffna. So we need to leverage on that, right? So how do we leverage on that? I think people like Jay and so on have got that idea. You need to tell the story. You need to sell the place. You need to make it emotionally satisfying to come to that place. The difficulty, of course, is that counter to this is what we in the social sciences call the effects of agglomeration, what we have been talking about as ecosystems. So it is easier for one IT company to succeed where there's a whole bunch of other IT companies. Even though we say they are placeless, there is a certain synergy, there's a certain cross-fertilization, etc., that comes from being in the same place. The coffee shops, the bars, the usual stories, right, that make a particular location attractive. And I don't have to say these things. As an outsider, I really shouldn't. But there are those among my friends who don't think Jaffna is a very exciting place to live in. So I'm not saying that. I'm just reporting what other people have said, which you yourself have heard last week, at the last meeting. So how do we make it attractive? Because the key to this business is attracting and holding high quality talent. That's it. Your raw material, your success, your everything depends on people. and you got to attract the right kind of people, preferably who have international experience and motivation and leadership skills, and you got to hold them. So the real challenge here is how do we do that? And I can see that I'm hearing a more optimistic story now than I was hearing 2 years ago in 2018 when I was applying my mind to this problem and seeing what could be done. I think that, I don't know about Sensagro. Now, Sensagro started as a Jaffna company, but their main facilities are here in Colombo. So the question is, you have to be in Colombo to meet the money guys, to have those interactions. So you need to almost like have a split existence, which is be in Colombo, have the marketing people here, and so on, which I think all of you are doing. I don't have to tell you these things. Practically, that's what you do. But have your operational team in Jaffna and create more and more conditions for the operations team to be happy doing it there. I was just sharing with Dr. Samarajiva an op-ed that I'm writing next week that will be published next week that has been written. The government has got this fixation on something called technoparks, and they have set apart 10 billion. Don't take this number seriously. These guys don't have any money and they're not going to actually spend 10 billion on anything. But part of the fiction of budget talk is they're saying they're going to spend a significant amount of money by our standards on 5 technoparks. And I'm looking at the 5 technoparks and I'm saying, really? You want to put one in Batiklo? I've done surveys in Batiklo about awareness of IT and gig work and so on. And Batiklo is like really low on awareness. Now, when you have a situation like that, that's not the place where you go put a tech park. So what I'm saying in my article is if you want to go to Jaffna. That has got more preconditions. It's a tough job, but it has got more preconditions than putting it in Jaffna or Ratnapura or someplace like that, right? Not Batiklo or Ratnapura or some location like that. And what they don't understand is that this is not the old kind of tech parks or zones that people in government are familiar with. These are places where, you need to be in the middle of the city. So if you look at Colombo, we were trying in the early 2002, I was one of the people who was flogging the IT zone, it's a zone in Malabe, where Millennium IT is located and a few other people are there, Cinec and so on. And we were trying to push this thing. And to most of the people who were setting up companies in Colombo, Malabe was too far. It was too remote. It was too rural. It was too unattractive. And even Millennium, by the force of will of Tony Veerasinghe, he dragged his company there and put them there in a very fancy building. But very quickly he had to set up a branch operation in Colombo because the marketing people said, you either let us be in Colombo or we won't work for you, right? So that's the kind of challenge that this business has. So the successful ones that are attractive are, for example, Trace Expert City, which is in Maradana, walking distance to, it's not coffee house central kind of thing. It's a bit of a grungy area. But what happens with these things is over a few years, they become interesting, like what Chekan was saying. These industries, these young people being brought to one place, they change everything around them as well. It's not that, just the market responds to their demand and their habits. And that area just becomes gentrified and more interesting. So that is a point that we've got to try to get to the government, that they shouldn't be building old style industrial parks, what they call plug and play and all that stuff. They use some of these terms, but they're wrong. What they should do is to contract it out to somebody who knows the business, There are companies in Singapore who have been doing IT parks and so on. You need to get people with that kind of experience and who will take the risk, because these are risky business anyway. Government is not good at handling risk. So that's the kind of argument we were having earlier, because even when I was in a government position, I had enough people trying to build tech parks and build government-run accelerators and things like that. And I had to quietly get them, realigned to the reality of the industry. So we have to keep working at it. I will keep promoting the idea that there should be some plug and play facility in Jaffna for people to, at a low cost, at least as they begin, not have to work out of a house. I've been to some places where you've just rented a house and you're running your business. I don't know whether that's how you do things, Jay, in somebody's house, and that's not optimal. So you need a kind of a structure that is properly located and which has got the fiber connectivity and all those other good things. So I don't think that my contribution should be in the sense of sort of repeating what everybody said, because we've all listened to that. I'm trying to sort of pick some themes out of that and make some general comments. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for the summary. Quite interesting, because you came at it from a different angle. Has anybody got anything they wish to add at this stage because we got a few minutes that we can have a discussion? If anyone has anything to say. No. Right, I'm sure they do have a lot, but I know it's quite late in Sri Lanka, so possibly that's what it is. And they're probably
one question, Renuka, to Rohan. I was thinking to myself, in this tech parks, is it possible to have something like a public-private partnership, where some of the investors themselves can invest and, take charge? I mean, so for example, even in Jaffna, I mean, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people in the diaspora who would be willing to invest if the facilities are there in that sort of tech park, sort of together with our IT colleagues. What do you think something like that would be rather than government driven?
Yeah, it has been done. So for example, right in the middle of Colombo Fort, stone's throw away from the president's house, the old GPO and so on, was the old BOI building, Board of Investment building, that caught fire at some point and was closed down and so on. That building was, the government still owns it, but they gave it out on a lease through a competitive tender. And Jeevan Jnanam and partners got it, and they developed this thing called the Hatch, which is quite extraordinary. I think, one of the most important things that I did was when I had a new minister, I said, let's not talk. Let's just get in the car and go. Because otherwise all these government bureaucrats were telling him about tech parks and so on. I said, come, I'll show you one. And I took him to this place. I don't think even I was able to go. I managed to get Jeevan to walk him around the place. After that, his attitude changed, because he saw what a sort of a facility, state-of-the-art facility is. So if you're looking at it in terms of a public-private partnership, Jeevan couldn't have done it, and Jeevan and his people, there's a big team there, couldn't have done it if that land wasn't, the premises were not given. So that is the public part of the public-private partnership. So they give some percentage, some payment to the government every month, every year, whatever. The government gets something for it. But the government has also decided that this is a good thing, and massive investment had to be done, because this is a horribly, basically a burnt out building. So that is one thing we can do in Jaffna, which is, if the government has got buildings that are not being optimally used in good locations, they could give them out. When I was talking to people, they were offering me Achueli. And I said, what the hell does anybody do with Achueli? that is, I mean, that's like my Malabay. That's too far from the action. I said, by the time we get some kind of e-commerce operation going, then when Palali is operational, maybe I can think of something for that place. But for the kinds of companies that we are dealing with today, you know, the Sensagros, the Arimas, and so on, what we need is something in the middle of town. So the other thing, of course, is the government can come in multiple ways, which is take private land, private building, and give them a subsidy to develop it in return for something commitment for X number of years. You know, subsidized rent for startups, etc., etc. Or, of course, the classic model where the government will simply subsidize people like Arima, people like Sensagro, etc., where we'll say, you want office space, you prove to us that you are actually physically located in such and such place, and for the next 2 years, you'll get this much money. And that'll allow them to kind of seed and make the economic model of the park guy better. So that's a kind of a sort of backward kind of public-private partnership. So these are the kinds of things we have to go for, which is not government guys trying to manage these places, but people with that sensibility that is needed for this business, managing them. And that generally comes from the private sector.
Okay, and thank you for that. Anyone else? Any comments at all? And before we
comment. What Professor Rohan said about young people changing the things around them is so correct. I've been in Jaffna now for 5 years, and this is a place that has a whole load of hangouts, which is completely understandable when you consider the decades-long war that happened here and the exit of a lot of the professional middle classes. There is a huge social engineering opportunity here, which comes with IT, where here you have young people who are achieving great things and are being rewarded, and they're providing an example to their families and to their friends, and they're driving their BMWs and getting them washed and cleaned, and they're going to restaurants. This is a huge social impact that the IT industry could have, and other industries. But this is something that is bigger than the IT industry, and it's something that can change the whole ethos of the North and bring great social and economic benefit, not just to the North, but to the whole of Sri Lanka. Because this prosperity from the North will bring stability, and people stop worrying about devolution and stuff like that when they have better things to do, when they're eating well, when their children have futures and aspirations. Who actually cares about devolution? So that's what I think is one of the great benefits of Arima and Kale and hopefully Sensmate eventually. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Jahan, for saying. And I just want to end by thanking Yoga and Niranjan helping to put some of the webinars together and the discussions we have, putting the speakers together as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. And please keep in touch with us if you know there are other conversations that need to be had, and give us ideas, because we're going to have a break now until the middle of January. That's after Thai Pongal, before we restart, and hopefully these webinar sessions. And so if you've got any ideas as to future webinars, please get in touch with us and let us know what's been useful, what's been helpful, and how we can rethink and improve the way we've been doing them. Thank you. And have a good night, everyone. And for those in California, good morning, I guess. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.